Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I am really excited for this episode. We have our first guest of 2024. Yay! So we are going to be speaking with Brittney Lynn, who is a CEO and PR strategist. In this episode, there were so many great gems, and it's basically like a workshop style. So if you are listening, you want to make sure you take notes. You want to make sure that you're writing down some nuggets, especially if you are looking to build authority in your space. One of the things that I know to be true, and I always say this to my clients, is that because you are credentialed the way that you are, and because you have the experience and the expertise of just what you do every day, regardless of the specialty, you need to be in a place of authority. There are too many people who go out and say the most craziest things, who don't have the expertise, who don't have the education, who don't have the experience, who haven't seen what you've seen, putting their nuggets or gems or whatever they think out into the marketplace. So if you are thinking like, oh, I'm not good enough, oh, who am I don't want to end up being in some of these places because no one's going to listen to me. But really deep down inside, you know that you could make a difference in such a bigger way. This episode is for you. Definitely. So I love the fact of who we end up working with. They have books. They have been featured in really big, high publications like Essence. They speak on stages, like really big stages. They have global ambitions, just wanting to do more work in the world than just what happens every day in their practice. If you are one where you are like, I just want to make the local impact and I want to make sure that I'm helping folks community wise, that's great too. You can still be an authority in your space, right? And so the whole point of this conversation, and the reason why I wanted to make sure we talked about it, is I don't want anybody to hide. I don't want anybody to dim their light because they think that they're not good enough or they think no one will listen to them, because Brittney will state this in the interview. Publications, TV, book deals, all of the things are looking for folks like you, folks, again, who are credentialed, have the education, have the experience, and actually know what they're talking about, compared to a lot of the people who are going after these opportunities in really feeding them nonsense. So let me tell you more about Brittney. So Brittney has been in the PR and online marketing industry for over 13 years, beginning her career working in-house for a recruitment company and then at a university in downtown Milwaukee. But after one bad job, awful boss, and finding the online entrepreneur space through podcasts, she and her husband decided to pay off $50,000 worth of debt in order for Brittney to be able to start her own business. She and her husband and her two lab hound dogs recently lived and traveled full time out of their self converted Sprinter van and now reside in sunny San Diego, California. So as you listen in, we touch on some of Brittney's adventures, but really the nuggets of the whole conversation and the meats and the potatoes is like the PR strategies that you can implement starting today inside of your practice in order to gain more exposure, gain more visibility. And it's all organic. So you don't have to put a lot of money into ads and all this stuff, right? And you can build authority in such a big way in order to help the people that you're here to serve. Hello. I'm so excited. We have Brittney Lynn here, who is one of my favorite. Actually, she's my only favorite PR person. So I had the blessing
I'm so honored.
I had the blessing of being able to work with Brittney in the past. And I know that she even came and spoke to our private practice CEO group and was able to provide some amazing insights when it comes to getting media and publications and features, as a private practice owner. And so I invited her today to talk CEO conversations and what we can do to maybe help increase your reach and definitely be able to build your authority when it comes to growing and scaling your practice. So, welcome, Brittany.
Yes, thank you so much. It's the first podcast interview of the year for me. And honestly, it's been a bit since I've been on a podcast. So I used to do a ton of podcasts. We're going to talk all about podcasts today. So I'm excited to be back. I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else but you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. So, tell folks a little bit about yourself. I know that they heard a little bit before the episode even started, but tell them more.
Yeah. So my name is Brittney Lynn, and just a fun fact, this will keep me in your mind later on when you're like, what was that great interview about PR? My middle name is also Lynn. So my name is Brittney Lynn. I married into that. It's a whole thing with the banks and paperwork, all that kind of stuff. It's just a fun way to be memorable. And I have a PR and partnerships agency called the Human Connection Agency. I have had that business for 7, 8 years now. Graduated with a PR degree, had worked in corporate in recruitment and at a university, doing PR, marketing, social media, all that kind of stuff. And then I was like, you know what? Let's just see if I can do this on my own. So I took my business full time in 2016. And we've really focused on PR specifically over that amount of time. And what I mean by PR, and again, we're going to talk all about this in this interview. We pitch for podcast interviews, for publications, print and online publications, and TV, both local and national. And then we also do, pitching for like Instagram lives with people. We've added a partnerships side of our business where we pitch for paid speaking opportunities, corporate workshops, brand partnerships, that kind of stuff. But really, our bread and butter is PR, visibility, getting out there. And I'm sure everyone listening maybe has some things in their head about what that means for them. Maybe they think that they're not ready, or maybe they think they are ready, but they don't know where to start. So we're going to cover all that. And I am currently based in San Diego. I just moved here a few months ago.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. How is San Diego? I know this is, like,
Yeah. Oh
not
my God,
PR, but
girl.
tell me, how is San
I'm
Diego?
obsessed. I love it here. I know why everybody lives here. Yeah. So my husband and I, we did 5 years in
Mhm.
Milwaukee. And then we did 8 years in Dallas. And so we did like the extreme cold, the extreme hot. And now I'm just like in the middle. Like the weather is gorgeous, particularly the week that we are recording this interview. It's brutal out there in the Midwest, so I am sorry to those. um, and I don't like to brag too much, but just everybody come visit me in San Diego, and we'll have a great time.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is, like, cloudy out over here in North Carolina.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
cloudy, it's
yeah.
nothing where I'm looking at like, "Oh, it's beautiful, I would love to go outside." It's more or less like, "Oh, I could take a nap."
It's a little
Yeah, spend
dreary.
the
Yeah,
day in the bed.
the sun is shining here today. I'm sorry. So come visit,
I
Brandy.
will,
Yes.
I will. So you said something starting out when it comes to
Hmm.
PR, and everybody has their probably their definition or what they think about
Hmm.
PR. So what are some of the common thoughts that you get or some of the common things that you hear when people start to think about, do I want to add more of a PR strategy for my business?
Yeah. So I didn't say this, but we primarily work with entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
CEOs. We work with people that have online businesses. We work with people that have brick and mortar shops. We've worked with a combo of those. So working with entrepreneurs and business owners really is our sweet spot.
Mhm.
And so what I see whenever people either come to us or maybe they're kind of right before they're coming to us, but I hear people kind of talking. If I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm talking about PR and I'm saying, oh, hey, I think, having a PR strategy that works alongside your marketing strategy would be a great fit for you. Um, Sometimes I hear resistance from
Mm.
people and they're like, I'm not ready for that. like I'm still building my business, or I'm not at a place where I'm ready to be seen and visible. I'm not ready to be interviewed. And in some cases that might be true, right? So I would, if you are brand new to starting business, you have some other things that you need to figure out first. You got to figure out your systems,
Mhm.
your SOPs, your team, all of that kind of stuff, the services that you're offering. But once you have a lot of those things, like once you have, your services and your offerings dialed in, once you have your system set up where you can take on more clients, whether that's virtual or in person, um, PR is a way to get you more leads for your business. But I think a lot of times when people think of PR, they think of, oh, like a celebrity publicist. It's like you always hear about, like, oh, so and so's publicist, like, or that's their like PR strategy. And they think that that doesn't apply to them because they are not a celebrity. I don't work with celebrities. um, really every type of business, but even particularly private practice business owners. And we're going to talk about the specific strategies during this interview, but everyone can use a PR and visibility strategy. And maybe, during this conversation, like Brandy said, we've worked with Brandy and her team in the past with her PR and visibility. And so maybe we could kind of talk about that too, as, a firsthand experience.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
think a lot of people hesitate. And that's really more so coming from they're just nervous about putting themselves out there, because putting yourself out there means people can have opinions. You
Yeah.
have to have an opinion about something during an interview. I think people start to feel imposter syndrome where they're like, well, who am I to be interviewed by Forbes when there's hundreds of other people? Who am I to be on the Today Show? Um, and what I would say to that is, there's nobody that's you. Nobody has had the same life experiences that you have had. Nobody has had the exact same career path that you have had that has brought you to today. And so your perspective matters and people need to hear that. And there's tons of private, if you're a therapist, there's tons of therapists out there, but there's a reason why your clients like you. And so that's where using PR to kind of amplify your messaging, get in front of more people, can send you more leads your way. And I feel like a lot of times right now, people kind of focus on, like, Facebook ads, social media ads, or just being on social media. And those are great marketing, strategies. And that's not the only strategy that you can use. There's other things that you can do, PR as one of them, to get more leads for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because I think the nail on the head here is the mindset piece of it. And I know when
Yes.
I even started to have conversations about, oh, I want to add a PR strategy to my marketing, it's so real, that mindset and the fear that can step in. Like, who am I to have an opinion? Who am I to go against the grain? Who am I to
Mhm.
maybe challenge the norms of things or to put my story out there in a very vulnerable way? And I know now, if you Google me, there's a lot of vulnerable things that I've put out there just in order to be relatable and to get my story out there, to empower people, to let people know that there's a deeper side to me, like all of those things too. So the mindset piece is definitely something that can come up. What I love about you and your company is that you have built in a mindset person, Jenny, who works with you, who
Mhm.
really
Yes.
helps with some of those things too. And so when you are trying to come up with a strategy for somebody and they think like, "Oh, I'm so nervous to put myself out there," or "Who am I to do this?"
Mhm.
or "I don't know if I even have a good enough story to share." What are some of the things that
Mhm.
you do to help people tackle that mindset?
So, Brandy has experienced our like brainstorm, picking your brain sessions. And I'm sure sometimes it's like, oh gosh, like what are they going to bring out of me today? But yeah, within our agency, we primarily work with people one on one. We do have opportunities where we have like a PR intensive where we kind of like put together the PR strategy for you and then you and your team implement. But like you said, the mindset piece is so important. I would dare I say it's the most important thing, because if you are not in the right mindset to be visible and to be out and about, if you will, being interviewed, um, you won't reap all of the benefits of media, and you might think, oh, this doesn't really work. um and so the mindset piece is just, I mean, you can have the best PR strategy in the world, but if your mindset, isn't in the right space, and if you're not feeling confident, that's what we really need to focus on. And so, like Brandy said, Jenny Kraus. She's a contractor on my team. She also has another business of her own called Supported CEO, but she does some consulting in my business. And it's really on that mindset piece. And what we really do, during these calls, is kind of a mixture of really just asking, just starting at like, hey, how did you start your business? And then we get into the whole story of, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're starting it for a reason. Most people aren't necessarily like, the first reason that they're starting their business isn't like, okay, I want to make a ton of money. Like, yes, money may be a factor of it, but it takes a certain type of person to become an entrepreneur. And
Absolutely.
so that piece, you're doing it for some type of reason. Maybe you started your own practice because you had a really bad experience with, we'll just say, use a therapist as an example. Let's say you had a really bad experience as a therapist, or whenever you were younger or something, you had a bad experience with a therapist. You really wanted to then become a therapist to change the mold, do it different, do it better than what you experienced, be a better service provider than the person that you experienced with. I'm just using that as an example. There's a million reasons as to why, you started your business. So really digging into the story behind why you started, um, is really important, because that is something that people can really resonate with, right? They get to know you and they get to connect with you. And especially as, a private practice business owner. And again, there's multiple disciplines of listeners, right? And different industries within the private practice space. But you're helping people in some way, shape, or form with their health, whether it's their mental health, their physical health, the health and well-being of a person. And so those potential clients, like, it's nice to know something about the person that they're going to be seeing and being likely vulnerable with, and so, for to kind of give an example to kind of like practice what I preach, I started my business. I worked in corporate. I never really had a great boss experience. And those are like horror stories we can tell on, CEO conversations after dark or something like that. I don't know. But my husband and I, we, decided to pay off all of our debt. And then through that, I was able to start my own business
Mhm.
after, because we didn't have all of the debt payments that we had to make. Um, and then that kind of turned into, I had never actually worked at a PR agency before, because a lot of in the industry, it's kind of a nightmare to work at PR agencies. A lot of times they're overworked,
Mhm.
underpaid, treated horribly, have terrible clients. Like, it just, like, the list goes on and on. And so then I wanted to create an agency that was different.
Yeah.
I didn't want to run an agency like that. I wanted an agency that clients felt really taken care of, but also the team members felt really taken care of. I wanted to work with people who were really wanting to make a difference in the world and really cared about the audience that they were trying to reach. I didn't just take on any old client that I could pick up.
Mhm.
And so again, that was kind of like, I wanted to see something different in the world, so I created it. And a lot of times that's what CEOs, that's what entrepreneurs are doing. So really connecting to your why you started this business, and start to actively share that with people. And if you want to warm up before doing any media interviews, do it on Instagram stories,
Yeah.
do it on an Instagram live, do it on your own platform first, get used to telling your story, and then you can tweak and kind of use that same stuff to pitch yourself to podcasts, publications, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. I love that because I can attest to everyone that we end up working with, and I know even the folks who are listening to this podcast have really big aspirations for why they got started. And like
Hmm.
building a business, it's can be great some days, and then the next minute you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do this? And then the next minute you're like, yes, I love it. And so when you're trying to take care of clients and patients and making sure that their well-being is on point, and then if you have team members who are trying to do the same thing, there can be a grind to that too. So recognizing like why are you doing what you're doing, and then I love what you said, allowing for people to get to know the person behind the business. And then even when it comes down to mission and vision, that mission and vision needs to be so strong for folks to be connected with. And so I know our clients, there's this particular client that I'm thinking of, and her story is so powerful for why she started her practice.
Hmm.
It happened to do with a patient that was in the hospital, and care that went wrong, and so she knew that she could do something better. And so she started her
Hmm.
practice from that place, and so that's a very
Hmm.
strong reason, part of her mission, part of her vision, part of the values and beliefs, and course core beliefs that are embedded in her practice too. So I think it's really important to go back to the why and a deeper why, which brings me to the next question. Once you understand, like, okay, there is a certain mindset that goes into me having to put myself out there in a bigger way.
Hmm.
I need to be grounded in my mission and vision and why I'm doing what I'm doing as a business owner. Before I even step into PR, what's the first step that the person takes once mindset is good? They understand their why, they realize that the impact that maybe they want to make. Like, what do they do then?
Great question. So you're ready to go. You're like, okay, I'm ready to do PR. Where do I start? Um, I recommend always aligning any of your PR strategies with your business's goals. So your business's goals should always come first, and then PR needs to support that. If your business's goals change along the way, then your PR strategy might need to change along
Hmm.
the way. Um, I think a lot of people go after vanity PR. And what I mean by that is, I want to be on this big podcast. I want to, be on Forbes. I want to be on Entrepreneur, but it doesn't actually have anything to do with their business or strategy, or doesn't support the business's overall goals. And so it's like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, that can be great, but
Yeah.
those are just like flashes in the pan. And I really think having a long-term strategy of it's not, because I'll be honest, likely most times one interview will not make or break you.
Yeah.
So getting onto Forbes, once is likely not going to send you 100 new leads your
Hmm.
way. I'm just being
No,
honest,
it's true.
you
Yeah.
know me.
Yeah.
You may have, I keep it real with Brandy,
Yeah.
she knows. Now there are certainly I've done podcast interviews for my business. There
Hmm.
are certainly podcast interviews that have sent me a ton of leads my way.
Yep.
There we had a client on the Today Show. Her book, jumped in rankings on Amazon because of the one interview. So I'm not saying it, but those are kind of like, those that's not common.
Hmm.
So you need to have a strategy that supports the bigger business goals. And so, each type of PR strategy kind of supports a different type of goal. Podcast interviews can directly send you new leads for your business. This could be an example. I'm a listener here listening right now, might be like, I want to hire Brittney. I've heard her interview. I'm ready to like do a discovery call with her. So that is podcast interviews can lead to direct leads. Um, uh, Publications, those can sometimes be direct leads. Those are sometimes more brand trust and brand awareness building type activities. New people that are landing on your website. If they see that you've been, interviewed on health.com, Mind Body Green, Entrepreneur, that the people that are viewing your website, they have a little bit more trust with you automatically, even if they don't know you, because they know those outlets. Again, those outlets could drive traffic to your website as well. But it's more of that like brand expertise. You get to add those to your bio. That can maybe help with like speaking gigs. Um, TV, can send direct leads your way, also helps you create a speaker reel. Again, if you want to get onto stages, having a speaker reel is very
Mhm.
helpful. So we can dive into those specific strategies, but I really think aligning it with your business's goals first. If you're like, I came into 2024, new leads for the business is my top priority. What are the ways that I'm going to get leads? Well, then I'm going to tell you to do this type of PR
Yeah.
strategy. If you're like, I just really need to build up the awareness around my brand, and build some brand trust because I'm still a little new to the game, then I'm going to tell you to focus on these activities.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I love PR. Like, I think it's definitely powerful when it comes to it almost like it just enhances everything that you're doing. So, like with the clients that
Yes.
we work with and for the folks who are listening, they have such a strong expertise. They have such a strong clinical expertise and they are better set up, I believe, than a lot of other folks who put themselves in positions to get their opinions out there and to say all this stuff, I mean crazy stuff that makes no sense. And
Yeah.
compared to the folks who are listening, they are credentialed, they're highly educated, they, help people on such a huge scale. It just amplifies the authority that they already have. And it complements what I love what you said too. Like earlier, it complements the marketing strategy. And you don't have to put in all the money for like ads, if it's Facebook ads or
Right.
Google ads, like it's
Exactly.
more of an organic marketing strategy and it allows for you to really show off how you help people and what your expertise is for sure. So,
Yep.
w
Yeah. So I'm so sorry.
oh, no, you're
You've
fine.
said some things that I'm like, I got to dive into
No,
those.
I'm the same way,
So
like, I'm the
yes.
same way with interviews. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." So you're fine.
Oh, I'm
Go
good.
ahead. Share the
Um,
knowledge, Brittany, share the knowledge.
yes, like you said, PR is a great way to grow your organic traffic because getting backlinks from podcast interview show notes, from publications, from TV, that helps in your Google search ranking. And again, too, like I don't want to say, don't do ads anymore, don't do social media, only do PR. PR is supporting everything else. So it's not to say to not do those things. You know, I don't want to dog on
Yeah,
those
thank you. It
marketing
enhances, it
activities.
complements, it's so
It just enhances, it complements, yes. And so yeah, and it's a great way to, practice getting your story out there, practice being interviewed, and like you said, especially for listeners of this podcast, y'all, you are credentialed. The media needs credentialed people. I am telling you, especially in the health related field, they don't want to hear from. So I'm going to apologize for anybody that's listening, but if you're just like, a health coach, but not like a credentialed, like
Mhm.
RD, nurse practitioner, physician, physical therapist, something like that, occupational therapist, um, they want the credentialed
Yeah.
people. And so there's such a need for that. There's so many stipulations, as it should be, honestly, I think, because journalists don't want to just put out articles that have quotes from people who aren't credentialed,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to health related
Yeah.
items. And so there is such a need. And I can share some things at the end of like, if you want to get started, of like how to find these
Mhm.
opportunities. But no, there it is so neat. A lot of times I'm like, dang, I wish I represented like someone that was credentialed in this because I see requests all the time.
Yeah, so it's true. It's so true. And so when you're thinking about strategy specifically, what are some strategies that you would suggest for the person who is like, "Oh, I'm listening to this podcast. I definitely want to dive into PR." What are some go-to strategies that and I know that we're not going to be able to cover them all here, but what are like your
Right.
top ones that you would recommend?
Yes. So I realize that there might be different types of listeners here who have different types of business setups. So I'm going to try to touch on probably the most common ones. So if you are a brick and mortar you just have a physical location, clients, patients come to, you're really looking locally to build more clientele, I would highly suggest local TV. So let's say you're in the Dallas area. Look up your local Dallas TV stations. There's going to be one for ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS. There's probably 4 or 5. And what you're going to do is you're going to find producers that are at that station. You can search on LinkedIn. There's paid tools that you can use out there too. But I'm going to try to, give you some free ones to start with.
Yeah.
And you're going to pitch an idea to them, of a segment idea for you to come on and to talk. Now you might be like, Brittney, what the heck do I talk about? How do I figure out like what topics to pitch? Well, what I would start with, one, you are an expert in physical therapy, whatever it is. So first off, I would just like literally open a Google Doc, get a notebook out, and just write down some topics that you're like, I can talk about for hours nonstop. I know, I don't have to practice. Like I know exactly what I would say. Then you're also going to think back to, what are the questions that my current patients and clients are coming in and talking to me about or asking about. So we're past the holidays, but I'm just going to use the holidays because it just happened as an example. For therapists, likely clients and patients are a little apprehensive about holiday gatherings, going back to see the family. It can be a little nerve-wracking, you're like, I don't know how Aunt Susie's gonna take whatever, like everybody has their opinions. Family dynamics are interesting.
Absolutely.
And so you might be going to your therapist to talk about, how do I handle the family dynamics at Christmas dinner? Guess what? Other people are probably experiencing that same thing. That could be a topic that you talk about on a segment on TV. People see you. And then guess what? Then they're going to go to your website.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go to your Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So I would highly suggest local TV. And truly, it's as simple as that. It's literally, when I say pitch, I'm saying it means email.
Yeah.
You're emailing a producer. Hey, I'm a therapist in the local area. I have a segment idea about XYZ. Here are some talking points that I can bring. Let me know if you're interested.
Yep.
Follow up if you don't hear back. It's as easy as that. You can also take that same thing and pitch it to podcast interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So let me kind of wrap up the local people, local brick and mortar TV, regional publications, your city publications, anything like that, because you're looking locally. You want people in, within probably an hour's drive. So getting in their face locally will be the best. Now, let's say you have a hybrid. Let's say you have a brick and mortar, but you also see people virtually. You have a bigger audience that you can outreach to. That is when I would say doing podcast interviews can be a great opportunity. And again, the same topic that I just talked about, family dynamics at the holidays, that can be a topic that you can talk about on a podcast interview. It's kind of the same thing. You find these podcasts, you search for them, you pitch the host. Hey, here's what I can talk about. Here are my credentials. And I do have pitch templates available. If people want those, we can maybe link to those in the show notes. Those are free for people to download.
Yeah, thank you.
And then again, too, if you have, even bigger aspirations, you want to be a global brand. You want national, international. You want to speak on stages. You want a book deal, all of those types of things. Then you can really do, all 3 types of media: podcast interviews, TV. Again, I would say if your goal is Today Show, Good Morning America, you will still want to do some local TV segments because they will want to see that you have been on TV before.
Mm-hmm.
So those local segments for the purpose of, I'm trying to get a national segment. Also too, sometimes national TV producers will watch local segments in the big areas, New York, LA, Dallas, Houston, to kind of get ideas for people that they can bring on. Publications, you'll also, I think, whether you're getting clients locally, regionally, or, virtually, or globally, publications are always great because, again, it means something to someone. Oh, I read health.com. Oh, they were quoted in health.com. Like, oh, they must be like legit. They must be, like a real business owner that like knows what they're talking about. Because thinking about it, if they're comparing two different people, two different therapists online, one of them has press interviews, the other one doesn't. Who are you going to go with?
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Literally, my brain, I'm going with the person that's been in press interviews, and I'm looking at other things too. I'm not only looking at, okay, have they been interviewed by somewhere? And obviously I'm a publicist, so like I'm extra thinking about that.
Yeah.
But even my husband, who is not a publicist at all, subconsciously that means something to someone.
Yeah. It's
So
that
it
social
means,
proof.
it's that social proof.
Yeah.
It's that stamp of approval. Other people have said this person knows what they're talking about. So that's kind of like what I do locally, what I do globally, tons of options for people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. I love it because it's like, especially in today's space, when it comes to private practice, there's the brick and mortar, there's the virtual. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes back to, do you want like a local awareness? Do you want a national awareness? And I know we have clients who are like, no, I'm taking things on globally. Like, I'm helping all the
Yep.
people in all the countries and doing the whole thing.
Yep.
So I think it goes back to, what is your goal? Who do you want to impact? And where does that alignment suit for you? Like, where's that alignment for you when it comes to what you're building? For sure, it sounds like.
Yep. And really being, crystal clear,
Mhm.
who is your ideal patient?
Yeah.
Who is your ideal client?
Mhm.
And I'm not talking about, oh, they're female and 20. I'm talking, where do they live?
Yep.
Where do they shop? What kind of clothes do they wear? What do they listen to? How do they spend their free time? Do they have kids or not? Do they drink coffee? All of these types of things, because that really starts to paint a picture of, oh, okay, that's how you start identifying what podcasts
Mhm.
to pitch or what publications to pitch. There's hundreds of thousands of publications out there. You getting quoted on all of them doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You need to focus on, where do my people read? What matters to my people?
Mhm.
And so you're going to want to think about that, because if you're on, a podcast that's about like fly fishing, like, I don't know, you might personally love fly fishing, but like, does that make sense for you to go on? Like, is
Mhm.
that where your ideal audience is listening? If so, cool, go for it. And of course, there's always, podcast interviews that you are maybe invited to
Mm.
that you just want to do because it's for fun. I used to live out of a self-converted Sprinter van for a couple of years. And so I was on a podcast that was about cooking, and it was about cooking in a van. It had nothing to do with PR, but it was just fun for me to do, like that was just like for fun.
Mhm.
That wasn't for, necessarily my business's like PR strategy. If I'm doing PR strategy for my business, when Brandy invited me on, I was like, oh, of course.
Right.
Like, first of all, I'm honored because I get to chat with you for an hour. But two, like, entrepreneurs and business owners are in my target
Mhm.
audience. So it's like, this makes sense for me to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I just love it. I think like strategy, that's one of the things that I'm listening or hearing from so many practice owners
Mm-hmm.
is things were easy. A lot of practices were built during the pandemic, a lot of them, and they didn't have to necessarily
Mm-hmm.
try. But fast forward to today, folks are now having to implement more of a marketing strategy. They
Now you
have
got to try.
right,
Now you got to try.
yes, and so the schedules aren't filling as easy as what they used to, and even for the folks who are full, they still have aspirations of growing. They still wanna hire more providers. They still wanna be in a place where they're able to make a big impact, and so, that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to have you here, and I know, yeah, I mean, you're amazing at what you do, and so I think just there's multiple ways to skin a cat is what I'm really trying to get down
Yes.
to, and that
Yep.
there's all kinds of ways that you can put yourself out there depending on what the impact that you wanna make and who you wanna help, and understanding where that person hangs out is definitely critical.
Yeah. And then I think too, if you're like kind of like, I don't really know where those people hang out, look at your competitors
Mhm.
and see where have they been interviewed, or people that maybe have a similar audience, but maybe you don't have, maybe you're not technically a competitor. So like us as an example, we're not competitors because we offer two different types of
Yeah.
services, but there's certainly crossover where, you know, we could work alongside the same clients, just doing our separate services. So looking at people that have adjacent services to yours, check out their websites. Where have they
Mhm.
been interviewed? That might give you some ideas, easy places to start. And then once you kind of get started and get in the groove, it becomes easier. You don't have to think as much of where the heck do I send
Yeah.
this pitch? Like, who do I send this to? But it needs to be a regular practice. And I'll
Mhm.
say this too. If you are a person that you're like, this sounds fantastic, you know, I don't know if I'm at a place where I can hire a dedicated publicist, but like I would love to get started, but also my schedule is crazy
Yes,
and I
that's a
don't
good
know if
one.
I
That's
can
such a
do
good one.
this.
Yes.
I'm a mind
Yes.
reader, I already know. Um, Here's the thing, even if you have a virtual
Mhm.
assistant or an executive assistant, a marketing person on your team, they can add some PR activities. This is where like our intensive is good, where we just kind of train you and your team of how to do
Yeah.
it. Um, but your person, I mean, have that person listen to this podcast interview, take notes. You know, even if they can do 5 hours a week, that's dedicated just to PR and visibility
Mhm.
activities. Okay, this week I'm going to research podcasts. I'm going to pitch the CEO to podcasts. Okay, next week I'm going to identify 5 publications to pitch, come up with some ideas.
Mhm.
And again, the ideas, like, we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel and coming up with a bunch of new ideas all the time. The idea part should be
Yeah.
easy because that's what you know. So it can just literally be you verbally for 15 minutes talking to, you know, your marketing assistant. Here are some ideas, do with them what you will. And or you know, if you have a blog, repurpose those blog posts for podcast interview topics or publication topics. You know, have a system where you're taking, you know, questions that you get from patients, compile all those questions. There might be some obvious topics that are coming up out of those. So yeah, having a virtual assistant, or again, only 5 hours a
Yeah.
week, like you can still, you know, make some movement and make some headway on that if you're not at the place to outsource that task yet.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm a testament to that because you guys trained Jalen, who is on
Yes.
my team, and Jalen has gotten me some amazing opportunities, to get me out there too.
Jayla taught me some things.
Yes.
Okay. Like literally, I was like, okay, can I take this idea? And like, I will credit you for this idea.
Yeah, so it's true.
Yeah,
It's
because
so true.
again, too, and especially with team members who have been key, you know, in the building
Mhm,
of your business, they know your business like backwards, forwards. Like that is really, really helpful
mhm.
because they probably will have a lot of ideas. They just might need a little bit direction and you know, you're okay to say, okay, I can focus on this for 5 hours a week. I know that this is important to do because this builds the bigger
Yeah.
brand.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think even for our listeners, everything doesn't have to be done by you. And to,
Hmm.
train up your team, train up your team. And so it's definitely such a good this is such a great conversation. I could keep going and going. But where can folks find you, Brittany, for services
Yes.
and all the things?
Services, all that kind of stuff. Humanconnectionagency.com. You can go to our clients page. You can see our current clients. You can see a case study of, you know, what it's like to work with us. PR intensive, if that is kind of you want to start with a project based thing. Those are kind of the two, working us one-on-one, and PR intensives is kind of the two main ways to work with us right now. You can follow me on Instagram. It's probably my most active social
Yeah.
media platform. So Brittney L. Lynn, we'll link to that in the show notes so you can get my name spelled correctly. It's N-E-Y, not A-N-Y. And yeah, those are the kind of two the two places to check me out, the website and Instagram.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I appreciate you.
Yes.
Appreciate you,
Thank you
bitchy.
so much for having me on. This was great. And like, I just want to do, can we just like keep going? Like I want to do a part 2, part 3,
Yeah, we
part
can
4.
talk about your sprinter van. like some
Oh my gosh, yeah.
like
That's CEO conversations
the
after
chronicles
dark.
of that, and then San Diego and all the stuff. So behind the
Yes.
scenes, or what did you call it? What did you say? The behind the after dark
Oh,
conversations.
CEO
Behind,
conversations after dark.
after
You can
dark,
take it.
after dark,
Yeah.
yes.
That'll be where, Brandy reveals all,
Yeah.
all of the real behind the
Right.
scenes of being a CEO.
Yeah. But thank you again. I appreciate it. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.